I stepped out of the taxi, my heels clicking against the pavement as I gazed up at the Grand Palazzo Hotel. The grandeur of the building was a testament to the city's rich heritage, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. This trip, meticulously planned down to the last detail, was my masterpiece, a celebration of my mother's 70th birthday, a grand European tour that would leave an indelible mark on our family's legacy. As I checked into the hotel, the concierge greeted me with a warm smile. Ah, Miss Ava, welcome to the Grand Palazzo. Your suite is ready and your family has already arrived. They're eagerly awaiting your presence. I nodded, a mixture of anticipation and anxiety churning in my stomach. This trip was more than just a birthday celebration. It was a chance to mend the frayed edges of my relationship with my mother, Ilara. The past few years had been a whirlwind of subtle slights and unspoken tensions, but I hoped that this grand gesture would bridge the gap between us. The elevator doors slid open, revealing the opulent hallway that led to my suite. The scent of fresh flowers filled the air, and the soft fume of distant conversations echoed through the corridors. As I entered my room, I was greeted by the sight of floor to ceiling windows overlooking the Arno River, the sun casting a warm glow over the cityscape. The suite was immaculate, every detail carefully curated to reflect the elegance and sophistication of Florence. I took a moment to appreciate the view, my mind racing with the countless details that had gone into planning this trip. From the flights to the villas, every aspect had been handpicked by me, a labor of love that I hoped would finally earn me a place in my mother's heart. But as I stood there, a nagging doubt crept into the back of my mind. What if this wasn't enough? What if, despite all my efforts, I was still seen as an outsider in my own family? The rooftop restaurant was a vision of elegance, with twinkling lights strung overhead and manicured olive trees casting dappled shadows on the tables below. The long table set beneath the starlit sky was adorned with name cards scripted in soft gold calligraphy. I scanned the table, my heart sinking as I realized that my name was missing. The seats were filled with familiar faces, my mother, Ilara, her new protege, Sophia, and my husband, Callum, but there was no place for me. I stood there, frozen in disbelief, as the weight of the realization settled over me. This was more than just an oversight. It was a deliberate exclusion, a message that I was not welcome at my own mother's birthday celebration. The air grew thick with the scent of betrayal, and I could feel the eyes of the servers on me, their expressions a mix of pity and confusion. Ilara, ever the gracious hostess, approached me with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Sweetheart, maybe you're tired. You don't have to stay for the whole dinner. Her words were a carefully crafted blade designed to push me quietly out of the room. I could feel the sting of tears threatening to spill over, but I refused to let them fall. This was not the time for weakness, it was a time for strength. Callum, sensing the tension, cleared his throat and offered a half-hearted explanation. Maybe someone just miscounted, he said, his arm brushing against Sophia's, his new arm candy. Her eyes flicked up, blinked once, then shifted away. Miscounted. You don't miscount your own daughter at a table of 13. I looked again, my gaze sweeping over the perfectly aligned place cards, the precisely folded napkins, and the wine glasses already filled. The table was perfect, except for one intentional absence, mine. I gave a small nod and stepped away, my voice steady as I replied, "Seems I'm not family." The room fell silent, the clinking of glasses and laughter fading into a low, contemptuous hum. I turned and walked away, my heels echoing through the hallway as I made my way back to my suite. The servers nodded at me, their expressions a mix of recognition and respect. In that moment, I realized that this was not the end, but the beginning of a battle for my rightful place in my family. The silence of my suite was deafening, the elegant decor now feeling like a cage. I stood at the edge of the balcony, the Arno stretching into the distance, glowing under the Tuscan moonlight. But I wasn't seeing the river or the bridges. I was replaying the events of the evening, the sting of betrayal still fresh in my mind. I pulled out my tablet, opening the itinerary I had painstakingly crafted. My name was listed across every page, initials marked on vendor, contracts, emails from my staff cross-referenced. Every ounce of this tour had my fingerprints on it, yet somehow I was invisible. A thin envelope slid under my door, the gold-trimmed cream card, stock bearing the press itinerary. I opened it, my heart sinking as I realized that my name was not on it, not even in the credits as event producer. Sophia's name was there twice, once as Ilara's legacy partner and again as brand liaison. I called Marco, my publicist, without hesitation. He answered on the third ring, his voice brittle. "Ava, hey, look." Ilara said you weren't interested in the press portion, that you prefer to stay behind the scenes this time. His words were a punch to the gut, but I refused to let the pain show. I didn't raise my voice, didn't defend myself. I simply thanked him and hung up, the weight of the realization settling over me. This was not an isolated incident, it was a pattern of erasure, a deliberate attempt to write me out of my own family's narrative. I opened the bottom drawer of my luggage, pulling out the leather bound journal I hadn't touched in months. On a blank page, I wrote, "They don't just want me gone, they want me forgotten." I underlined the words, the memory of past betrayals creeping up like a shadow. I was 8 years old, standing in front of the mirror whispering, "You're not 8 anymore." And I meant it. The game had changed, but the players hadn't. Ilara still pulled the strings, Sophia was happy to dance, and Callum stayed just detached enough to keep his conscience intact. But me, I was done waiting for a seat. If they were rewriting the family narrative, they'd soon remember that I was the one holding the pen. The next morning, I woke up with a renewed sense of determination. The betrayal from the night before had solidified into a resolve to confront the situation head on. I dressed carefully, choosing an outfit that exuded both professionalism and quiet strength. Today was the day I would begin to reclaim my narrative. I made my way to the conference suite, where preparations for the birthday tribute were underway. The room buzzed with activity as tech crews adjusted spotlights and AV staff organized cables and screens. I moved through the chaos with purpose, my presence commanding attention despite the flurry of activity. As I approached the podium, I noticed Sophia rehearsing the keynote speech, the speech that was supposed to be mine. She stood there, radiant and confident, as if she belonged in that role. I stepped closer, my voice steady as I asked the coordinator for the speaking notes. He handed me a folder labeled Sophia Keynote, and I opened it, my eyes scanning the contents. Ilara walked in just as I finished reading. "Oh, Ava," she said, her voice smooth and effortless. "I thought we talked about this. Sophia's taking the toast this year. She's got a fresh voice, something that connects with the younger generation. You know how the press loves that." I didn't nod or respond immediately. Instead, I let the silence stretch until it turned uncomfortable. "I don't remember nodding, but I must have," I said finally, my voice calm and measured. "That's what people like her count on you freezing just long enough for them to move on." I excused myself and returned to my suite, where I opened the bottom drawer of my luggage and pulled out the leather-bound journal. On a blank page, I wrote, "They don't just want me gone, they want me forgotten." I underlined it, the memory of past betrayals fueling my resolve. I remember being 8 years old, standing in front of the mirror, whispering, "You're not 8 anymore." And I meant it. The game had changed, but the players hadn't. Ilara still pulled the strings, Sophia was happy to dance, and Callum stayed just detached enough to keep his conscience intact. But me, I was done waiting for a seat. If they were rewriting the family narrative, they'd soon remember that I was the one holding the pen. That evening, I arrived at the hotel ballroom earlier than scheduled. The chandeliers had just been lit, and the scent of polished marble still clung to the air. Tech crews were adjusting spotlights, and the AV table was a mess of cable screens and someone's half-eaten biscotti. I moved through the room like I belonged there because I did, because I built this. Marco spotted me and gave a quick nod. "We're loading the final tribute video. Want to preview?" I answered with a short yes, my posture exuding professional detachment while my heart raced with anticipation. The screen flickered to life, displaying old footage from Super 8 home movies Ilara used to have transferred years ago. There I was, age 6, clinging to her skirt during a museum gala, then on a pony at a family ranch event, school photos, birthday cake moments. My throat tightened, not from nostalgia, but from the realization of what was coming. By the halfway point of the video, I vanished. The rest of the montage showcased Ilara's recent triumphs, awards, interviews, photo shoots with Sophia prominently featured in every public frame beside her. My mother's voice overplayed like a eulogy to herself, emphasizing legacy and trust. I didn't blink, not once. Instead, I turned to the AV tech and said, "Can I see the cue sheet for the slideshow?" He handed it to me, a laminated checklist, color-coded. Segment 1, Ilara Early Vision. Segment 2, Ilara plus Prodige. Segment 3, Ilara Legacy Speech, Sophia Live. There was no segment 4, no mention of me, not even as a producer or background. This wasn't a tribute, it was a transfer of power. I took a photo of the cue sheet with my phone, capturing it from 2 angles without using the flash. "You okay?" Marco asked, his voice attempting casual concern. "I'm great," I replied, my tone measured, just confirming we're on schedule. He gave me a look the kind people give when they know something's off. but don't want to be the one to name it. Then he turned back to the monitors. My steps were slow as I left the ballroom, not from fatigue, but from the calculations running through my mind. Back in my suite, I opened the archive folder on my tablet where I kept documentation from every major event I'd ever designed. I uploaded the photo of the cue sheet, labeling it Elara Tribute Erasure Proof. It was for revenge, it was for memory, for the record, for the next time someone asked, are you sure this wasn't just a mistake? Because it never was. A knock on the door broke the silence. Room service. I hadn't ordered anything, but the staff smiled and handed me a covered tray. Beneath the lid was a single espresso and a handwritten card from Sophia. She's earned this. Please don't make it about you. V? I laughed, not loud or bitter, just tired. Because this is what happens when people are trying to replace you. They don't fight you directly, they fade you out gradually, softly, so that when you're gone, no one notices you left. The next morning, I remembered something I hadn't thought of in years, my first solo feature in Chicago Celebrates magazine. I was 26 and I'd landed the piece on merit, no name dropping, no strings pulled. I was so proud. I printed a high gloss copy, framed it, and mailed it to Elara with a note that said, in case you want to add it to your office. She never replied. Years later, while helping her assistant move boxes into a storage unit, I found it, still wrapped in brown paper, never opened. She labeled it Miscellaneous Press Ava. Miscellaneous? I returned to the present with that memory still hanging over me like smoke. Sophia had a section, a title, a platform, and I had a drawer in a dusty closet no one opened. But here's the thing about closets, they don't stay closed forever. I wrote a new note to myself in my journal. If they were trying to delete me quietly, I would make my return loudly. You can't erase someone who built the foundation under your feet. I repeated that sentence like a mantra as I stepped out of the elevator heading back to my room. But the second the door slid open, I froze. Callum and Sophia were standing directly outside my door, laughing at something, wine glasses in hand. Her fingers trailed lazily down his sleeve. His back was turned toward me, but hers wasn't. She saw me immediately, smiled. Long day? She asked, her tone sweet like syrup poured over something spoiled. I didn't answer, just slipped past them, unlocked my door, and stepped inside. As the latch clicked shut behind me, I stood there a full minute, no breath, no thought, just stillness so tight it hurt. That placement wasn't coincidence. The next morning, I woke up with the clear plan in mind. I had spent the night reflecting on the betrayals and the deliberate attempts to erase me from my own family's narrative. It was time to take action and reclaim my power. I made my way to the hotel's business center where the final printouts for the EV were being assembled, event brochures, media kits, name placards, sponsor packets. Everything looked polished, flawless, and expensive except for one glaring omission. My name was nowhere to be found. Not under executive event producer, not in the team acknowledgments, not even in the back credits where they usually thank the florist and transportation vendor. It was as if I had never touched the event, despite having meticulously planned every detail. I didn't say a word. Instead, I took one of the brochures and tucked it under my arm like a case file. 10 minutes later, I was back in my suite when my phone dinged with an incoming email. The subject line read, updated visuals confirm ASAP. It had come from Milera's assistant, but what caught my eye was that I had been CC'd accidentally. I opened the thread and scrolled through the messages. There was Alara's message sent 4 days ago. Let's keep Ava out of the promotional visuals. It confuses the brand hierarchy. Focus on Sophia. She's the right tone for press optics. Beneath it, a reply from the hotel's PR coordinator. Understood. Sophia will be positioned as the primary contact moving forward. No stutter, no caveats, just clean removal, like cutting a name from a seating chart. I stared at the screen, my fingers steady as I hit reply all and typed, thanks for the update. I'll be reviewing all visual and legal placements moving forward. No exclamation mark, no smiley, just a period. A full stop, because the most powerful thing you can say to someone who is pretending not to notice you is, I see you. Within 5 minutes, I had 3 missed calls from the assistant and 2 from Ilara's number. I didn't answer. I took my time, got dressed, ate breakfast, and then around 10 a.m., I stepped out onto the rooftop viewing deck where I knew she'd be. She was standing alone, staring out at the skyline like a matriarch surveying her empire. Darling, she greeted me with that smooth, effortless charm she wore like perfume. You've been so quiet. I hope you're not letting the press visuals get under your skin. It's just optics, not affection. I walked up beside her, letting the pause stretch until it turned uncomfortable. You don't get to call it affection when you're deleting me, I said, my voice steady and firm. She turned to look at me, a flicker of surprise in her eyes. I'm not trying to delete you, she replied. I'm trying to preserve momentum. Sophia, she connects faster, younger demographic. The press listens to her. I gave a small, tired laugh. You mean she doesn't remind them of you? I said. Her silence answered me more than any defense could have. For years, I had kept thinking I was climbing a ladder toward my mother's approval, but now, standing there beside her, I realized it had never been a ladder. It was a treadmill, and she'd been controlling the speed the whole time. I stepped back. You built this story, Mother, I said softly. Just don't be surprised when it stops going your way. I walked away without another word. Later that afternoon, I was in the hotel's business center, printer humming beside me, confirmation emails open on the screen. Copies of contracts, invoices, deposit receipts my company had fronted more than half the trip, and every arrangement carried my name. I filed every document into a secure drive, marked a contingency plan hauled in events, because if they wanted a legacy without me, they build it without my support. If erasing me was part of their legacy plan, then they shouldn't have built it on my signature. I closed the last contract folder, locked the door to the hotel's private meeting room, and opened my laptop with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. The screen lit up, and so did my purpose. Every vendor was listed neatly in the event itinerary spreadsheet, color-coded, cross-referenced, designed by me. Every payment confirmation was tied to Halden events. Every contact had my signature. They could cut me from the stage, but they forgot one thing: this production existed because I built it and I could unbuild it. One by one, I began. First, the vineyard in Tuscany. I called the manager directly. He greeted me by name, warm and professional. I thanked him for the impeccable service and informed him the Caldwell Group would no longer require the space. I arranged for the full deposit to be refunded to my business account. Second, the yacht in Capri, the reservation for the private sunset cruise canceled, the deposit already scheduled to hit my account in the morning. Third, the villa gone. Fourth, the Vatican's private art tour. I emailed the cultural liaison and explained there had been a change in itinerary. She responded within minutes, apologizing for any inconvenience and confirming the cancellation. Every call was clean, every message polite, professional detachment wrapped in silk. By the time I logged off, the fight had already begun. The emails would start trickling in by evening, confused assistants, nervous planners, and eventually Lara herself. But I was done with explanations. They erased me from the credits, so I removed them from the experience. Later that evening, I slipped into the hotel's bar to order mint tea, needing something warm and grounding. I hadn't even taken a sip when I heard it. That's got a sting, huh? I looked to my left. Sophia perched on a velvet stool, swirling a glass of wine with one hand, her posture loose, smile sloppy. She was tipsy, just enough to lose her filter. She took another sip, leaned in like we were old girlfriends. Ilara said I'd be her public face going forward. She whispered, voice sticky with pride. The whole legacy thing, the gala, the press, it's kind of poetic, right? You set the table, I just get to sit at the head of it. I didn't flinch, didn't blink, didn't respond. She smiled like she'd won something, and that told me everything I needed to know. I left her there in her little moment of imagined victory and returned to my room, no tears, no speeches, just a pen in my hand and a journal half full of clarity. This isn't revenge, I wrote. This is release. Then I drafted a short internal memo to my legal team at Halden Events, effective immediately, place all current and future Caldwell-related engagements under legal review. No services are to be rendered without written reapproval. I hit send and I walked to the window and watched the lights of Florence begin to glow against the dusky sky. It was almost time. I opened the garment bag and pulled out the navy velvet gown I brought for the gala. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't designed to be noticed, but it fit like armor. I dressed with precision, no panic, no shaking hands. Then I picked up my phone and called Marco, the maitre d' at the rooftop restaurant. Hi, Marco, it's Ava Halden, I said calmly. Can I stop by for 5 minutes before tonight's event begins? I'd like to confirm a small change in logistics. Of course, Miss Halden, he said, warm and eager. Anything you need. As I hung up, I glanced at myself in the mirror, not the version they tried to erase, not the girl begging for a chair, but the woman who designed the entire damn table. They planned to humiliate me publicly, so I made sure the fallout would be just as visible. From the quiet shadows near the kitchen alcove, I watched the show unfold exactly as they had rehearsed at candlelit tables, designer gowns, champagne, flutes raised high. Ilara stood center stage, resplendent in emerald silk, a forced youthfulness clinging to her posture. The applause rained over her like confetti. Sophia sat at her right hand, smiling with the soft humility of someone who knew they hadn't earned it. She leaned in as Ilara spoke, nodded on cue, laughed when prompted like a well-trained echo. Marco glanced at me from the corner. I gave him the slightest nod as dessert arrived, a towering millefeuille. Ilara had insisted it be flown in from Milan. Marco approached the table, leaned down, and murmured something into her ear. I saw her blink, then frown. She waved him off. Marco stepped back respectfully, persistent this time. He spoke a little louder, just enough for a few heads to turn. I'm sorry, Mrs. Halden, but we'll need a new form of payment to continue service. The previous guarantee has been revoked. Ilara gave a brittle laugh. That's absurd. Use the corporate card. We tried it, declined. The room shifted, laughter paused. Forks clinked against china. Ilara's face drained of color just slightly, but enough for those who knew her to notice. She reached for her purse, realized she didn't have it. Richard, one of her board allies, leaned in. Is there a problem, Ilara? I watched the edges of her world begin to fray and said nothing. I slipped out before the entire structure buckled under the weight of its own arrogance. There was no need for me to stay. The next morning, it began. My phone buzzed before I finished my espresso. Don't panic, my PR consultant said, voice clipped and fast. Ilara's team is trying to control the damage. They're feeding a story to a few blogs. What kind of story? She sighed. That you snapped. Emotional distress. Overstep. There's already a headline. Event planner snaps at Mother's Gala. I didn't answer right away. I just closed my eyes and let the silence wrap around me like armor. They were spinning it hard, but I wasn't ready to respond yet. An hour later, a friend from New York sent me a screenshot, an anonymous quote, conveniently timed, published in a society column. It's hard watching someone unravel, especially when they used to be so promising. Attributed, of course, to a source close to the family. I stared at it, read it twice, then I opened my voice memo app and hit record. My name is Ava Halden, I said quietly. And I'm not unraveling, I'm remembering. The morning after the gala, I woke up to a flurry of messages and missed calls. Ilara's team was scrambling to control the damage, but I remained calm and focused. I had reclaimed my power, and now it was time to ensure my voice was heard. I met with a journalist, someone who owed me a favor, and laid out the evidence: emails, vendor contracts, payment records, timestamps. I didn't ask for a hit piece. I wanted clarity. I wanted the truth to be louder than the myth Ilara was trying to sell. The journalist nodded, understanding my intent. You're not the first person Ilara tried to rewrite, he said. That night, I slept with my phone face down, letting them scramble, letting them spin. They wanted to break me in public, so I handed them the spotlight and let the truth echo. The next morning, I woke up to see the fallout. Ilara had announced a reconciliation brunch, a desperate attempt at damage control. I wasn't invited, but I walked in anyway. The room fell silent as I entered, all eyes on me. I placed a folder on Ilara's table containing screenshots, invoices, and bank transactions, all documenting the erasure of my response. You all deserve to know what really happened, I said, my voice steady. Ilara stood, trying to maintain her composure. Diana, this isn't the time, she started, but I cut her off. It never is, according to you, I replied. But I'm done asking. I opened the folder, showing each piece of evidence, my voice unwavering. This is what erasure looks like when power fears accountability. And this, I held up a vendor cancellation confirmation, is what consequence looks like when someone finally says no. The room was silent. Ilara's expression cracked, her voice wavering as she said, we're family, Ava. You're blowing this out of proportion? Are we? I asked, tilting my head. Then why was I never allowed to speak without being edited? I turned to leave, but paused at the door. You can keep the spotlight. I'll keep my name. And I walked out, no applause, no cameras, just the sound of my heels echoing down the hallway. In the days that followed, emails started trickling in from vendors across Europe. Ilara's team hadn't responded to balance requests. No one wants to guarantee her events now. One wrote, too much drama, too little honor. I archived the messages and moved on. An envelope arrived, handwritten, no return address. Inside, a short note from Ilara, I regret how this was handled. You are stronger than I gave you credit for. No love, no mom, just Ilara. It was the closest thing to an apology I would ever get. I tucked it into the back of my journal, a reminder of the past but not a burden. 6 months later, I found myself standing on a sunlit terrace in Positano, finalizing florals for a celebrity's daughter's wedding. The air was filled with the scent of sea salt and lemon trees, and the laughter behind me was real. The junior planner leaned close and whispered, "You're the woman who walked away from that family in Florence, right?" I didn't answer, just smiled. That evening, I opened my journal. The first entry, once filled with confusion and fear, now had a new line beneath it. They tried to unname me. I renamed myself. Healing isn't about forgiveness, it's about not waiting to be forgiven. It's the power to rewrite your own ending without permission, without applause, just the sound of your own pen on paper. As I closed my journal, I looked out at the terrace, the sun setting over the sea. I had reclaimed my narrative, and with it, my peace. The journey had been tumultuous, but the destination was worth every struggle. I was no longer the girl begging for a seat at the table. I was the woman who had built her own.